Welcome to the Me the Money Show. I'm Dan Barnes, Editorial Director for Markets Media Europe, and joining me is Shanny Basar. Shanny, welcome to the Me the Money Show.
Hello, nice to talk to you again.
So can you tell us what stories you've been looking at this week?
Yeah, I've had two interviews where I've talked about outsourcing, so I thought that'd be an interesting topic to cover today.
Yeah.
One of them yesterday was with Pershing, part of BNY Mellon, and they're planning, they're aiming, I should say, to increase the number of clients that use them to trade equities in Europe, and they're planning to double that over the next 12 months, which
That's
sounds
really interesting.
quite impressive. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So they're providing outsourced trading on the equity side?
Yes. And across asset classes, but in particular in equities is where they're expanding. And then because they're owned by BNY Mellon, they can then do all the processing, so it goes into custody, like all in one place. But in particular, they've been doing equities trading in the UK and Ireland, and then had a lot of calls from other clients in EMEA saying, "Oh, we'd like to outsource our trading." I guess partly because of the cost, and then obviously the regulatory reasons. So MiFID II gave a lot more responsibility to asset managers to report and for best execution. So if you're a small fund manager, that's quite expensive for you. So they've had a lot of demand for outsourcing, and then in particular, Michael Horan, who I was speaking to, who's head of trading in EMEA, mentioned that during the COVID-19 pandemic, when the volatility increased a lot, they had like a huge demand because people couldn't find liquidity on screen, and his traders were quite experienced and they had lots of contacts and could call people. So that's boosted interest as well.
It's really interesting to see that congregation of the trading skills within certain large firms, because I tend to think of trading as being something which really adds value to the investment process, potentially adds a lot to the PMs. And of course, if you're going to manage that process with an outsourced provider, you have to have a lot of lines of communication open. Even when people started moving to trading remotely, there were questions of how effective their workflows would be if they weren't sitting next to PMs. I think that seems to largely have been successful. So maybe that's a sign that outsourcing
I think one of the things he said is that I thought was quite interesting. He said, "Oh, we're not just an agency broker. We're like in the room with our clients. So they treat us as their, if they were in their firm doing their in-house trading, they treat them the same way. So they discuss their strategies with them. It's not just, oh, I want to use an algo and we send them an electronic order. It's like they'll talk to them whether they want to use voice, whether they want to use electronic, whether they're looking at kind of the more difficult markets or more difficult trades, I guess. Yeah. So it's more of a relationship thing.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I think one of the challenges is always, if people want to have certain strategies where trading is an inherent part of that for generating alpha rather than just managing the costs of trading, potentially you need quite a lot of specialized skills or tools there. Do you think that might be a sticking point for outsourced trading? Do you think there's a certain level to which it can go and then it stops, or could they even achieve that?
I think it's probably, for the people you're outsourcing to, they've probably got the resources to do that. Well, if you're a small fund manager, I think you don't have the resources to invest in the technology that you need if that's going to be your selling point. And I think it's hard for the smaller firms to keep up with the investment that you need to do that. Yeah. And plus the fact they have the feed pressure because passives are growing. So there's compressed fees. So I think the two things together are pushing people to outsource.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And then potentially, of course, if you're aggregated trading within an outsourced provider, they can trade large blocks, which tend to be overall net cheaper to trade than smaller trades, if you can find liquidity on the other side to actually match your order.
Yeah, exactly. And I think one of the big things, I think, since MiFID II came in is the regulatory reporting side as well. Yeah. So, if you're doing your own trading, you have to produce reports saying, oh, these are the venues that I've used, these are the executions that I've had. While if you're outsourcing all that to someone else, you don't have to do all that. So it saves you all that money as well.
That's great. Thanks very much. And then I think you're also looking at the tie-up between Northern Trust and BlackRock, weren't you?
Yes, I was. Yeah. So I talked to Penny Biggs in London, and she was mentioning to me that basically they have it's called a whole office approach. So they have a modular approach, so you can go from trading to custody, and all things in between. Yep. And one of the things is they've linked their middle office functions to BlackRock's Aladdin system for their mutual clients. So the data will just flow automatically between the two systems now, instead of requiring any kind of manual intervention. So then it's much more efficient, and clients have more timely information as well.
So this seems to tie into the story, the ongoing story between Aladdin and Charles River. Aladdin, of course, being BlackRock, and Charles
Yep.
River having been acquired by State Street, both trying to provide a full front-to-back service in terms of front office trading, all the way to middle and back office processing, and eventually custody. Do you see that as being an element of that sort of strategy?
I think so, and especially for people who've got that infrastructure already. So obviously, Northern Trust has it, BNY Mellon has it. So it's kind of, for them, it's not like they don't need to make a huge investment to be able to provide all those services.
Mm.
So I think for them it makes sense. It makes perfect sense.
Yeah, and of course, large custodians have been outsourcing the middle and back offices of asset managers into their own
Yeah.
infrastructure for quite some time, haven't they? So it's just,
Yeah.
I suppose, really going back to your point about the front office, that's just the next stage.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I think now where it's much harder to find alpha,
Yep.
I think a lot of fund managers realizing I might as well just focus on, I'm good at making investments, and that's what I should be focusing on, rather than having to worry about all these other things that aren't my core strengths.
That makes a lot of sense. Shanny, that's great. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Good to talk to you again.
You too.
Take care.